Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. This video is going to be all about whether I would repurchase 10 eyeshadow palettes that are currently in my makeup collection. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. This video is going to be about 10 eyeshadow palettes I currently own, and I'm going to be asking myself the question, would I repurchase these? Would I buy these again? If I lost them, or if these were new to the market, would I be interested in buying them now? Like, are these any good still? Now that I've used them, tried them, owned them for a while, is this something I would be interested in right now? So let's just get to it. But before we do that, I would like to introduce myself to anyone who might be new here. My name is Maaike, I live in the Netherlands, I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, and this greatly influences how I feel about makeup. I have been reviewing for more than a decade. I love myself some eyeshadow palettes, Essence and Catrice, and getting the use out of my makeup. So if that's something you might be interested in as well, I hope you'd like to stick around and consider subscribing. So today I have yet again a very random selection of 10 palettes, and this time I did not forget to check whether I had mentioned any of these before or not. But yeah, I went through my eyeshadow palette collection, I went through my drawers, and I selected 10 palettes to chat about. Let's just get to it. First things first, where to start? Let me start here. We are going to start off with the Colourpop That's Taupe. I have a bunch of Colourpop color stories. You guys know this about me if you've been here for a while. I own quite a few Colourpop palettes, and as much as I enjoy the Colourpop formula, their color stories are not always my favorite. However, a lot of Colourpop eyeshadow palettes are magnetic. Not all of them, but if you have the cardboard packaging, you can pull them out with a magnet and you can very easily rearrange any of the Colourpop color stories that you may have lying about. And I have done that for the majority of the Colourpop palettes that I've ever purchased, and that also means that I have actually decluttered quite a few. I love mixing and matching my Colourpop color stories by now. It's sort of like a yearly thing by now, where once I do declutters, I will actually have a couple of palettes, very often that includes some Colourpop things, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull these apart, I'm going to rearrange them. I also do it with palettes that have like glued in pans as well, but it's very rare for me that Colourpop palettes are not included in some of those palette reorganization videos. So when I come across a Colourpop palette that does not need the reorganization, that means it's a really good palette, and that's what goes for the That's Taupe. This is, I think, the only one, I think so, I think one of the very few palettes by Colourpop that I've never reorganized, that I've kept the way it is because I just felt it worked. It does have quite a deep matte compared to everything else that's going on, so it would have been nice if one of the other shades, like it pulls very light and then goes super deep. That can be a thing. It might have been nice to have one matte to sort of bridge that gap, but it also has 4 really, really gorgeous shimmers. So for me, like the only shade I would probably take out of this would be something like this, because this is like weirdly warm compared to everything else that we have going on, and like replace it with something else. Now, if you've seen the Colourpop review I did for you in September, then you know I now own the Deja Brew, which is almost like a more perfect version of this, you could say. So I'm not sure whether this palette in particular is still going to have this layout come my next declutter. I think in 2024 it may be time to rearrange the That's Taupe by now. But it's like the only one from like my original Colourpop color stories that I haven't messed with, and that just shows you that this is just good. I have recommended this to so many people. I love this thing to pieces, and I would repurchase this in a heartbeat. Would this be on the top of my list as the palette to repurchase for having like a taupe neutral eyeshadow palette in my makeup collection if I were to lose all of my eyeshadow palettes? By now, this is no longer at the top of that list. I would probably go with a Glam Shop color story. That's for sure. And I think actually now that that new Gal on Jupiter palette is out from Gloss Gods, That's also quite taupey. So that could be like a version of this kind of color story that I like better than this. So I probably wouldn't run out to repurchase this, but this is definitely something that I think if you have easy access to Colourpop and you know you can get your hands on this and you want to try something new taupey, then the That's Taupe is still really good till this day. I would definitely get my hands on it again, but like I mentioned, it's not top of the list. Something else that's quite affordable that I wanted to mention here is the Makeup Revolution Zodiac Air palette. And the only reason why I bought this was because I was gonna do another full face of Makeup Revolution this year. I think I filmed it in like April or May, and I wasn't a fan. I kind of bought this because I was like, wow, this looks like a color story I might like. It's got like taupey grays and then some really nice green tones in here. And overall, this palette just didn't quite deliver in terms of quality. I know that Makeup Revolution can do really good eyeshadow formulas, but they release so much that I feel they are very inconsistent. And currently, I'm not really following anyone who's really raving about recent Makeup Revolution color stories, you could say. Like, what is the good stuff? I think at this moment in time, the Soph palettes are still regarded as some of the best things Makeup Revolution has ever done. And that says something because those palettes are like, what, 6 years old by now? And those were good, but they're very warm toned. So I would love to see Makeup Revolution do something more cool toned, like a cool toned version of the Soph Extra Spice. Who's with me? So this wasn't quite it. I would definitely not repurchase it, and it would just be forgotten. Like, if I lost everything, I wouldn't miss it either. We have to talk about some indie stuff as well, of course. The Shroud Cosmetics Arcana. This is one of my favorite fall-time color stories. It's got all the jewel tones you could possibly need. And that's, I think, also one of the reasons why I'm not really looking into jewel tones, because I have this. And if I want jewel tones, this is the palette I reach for. And now that I have some of the other Shroud palettes, the Moonfall and the It's Freaking Bats, they work so nicely with this that if I feel this color story is too limiting for me, I have colors in the same formula that I really love and adore that are going to take this to another level so easily. Does that mean that you need to go out and buy multiple Shroud palettes to do that? No. I think this by itself is still a stunning palette. I do think, however, that in terms of how the color story works, is like, I would almost say that it is a little bit dated, but now that I'm thinking back to some of the new makeup releases that have been announced, we're seeing actually quite a few palettes that do this, where they do the split of a warmer tone and a cooler tone section all in one palette. Like the new Bella Beauty Bar palette has it, the new Lethal Cosmetics palette has it. There's a bunch of eyeshadow palettes being released that do something like this, even within this color story, where they have like berry warm tones and like bluish green cool tones. And I'm like, I already own this, so I don't feel I need any of the new stuff. You know what I mean? Because I have this. Would I repurchase this? Absolutely. Because I just love Shroud and I love their formula, and I think this is one of the best eyeshadow palettes in my entire makeup collection, which is why, yes, I would repurchase this. Something that I don't think I would repurchase now that I've tried it is one, but that is actually by one of my favorite brands. This is the Viseart Petite Cool Mattes, and this is the all matte palette with the cool undertones. And I bought this because I was like, you know what? I love the Viseart formula. They are one of my favorites, like top 5 favorite eyeshadow formulas. Viseart, hands down. They are just up there for me. I really enjoy their quality. So there's nothing wrong with this from a quality standpoint at all. It's just that I felt that the colors didn't pull on me the way they look in the pan and the way I had expected them to by looking at them in the pan and swatching them. So this has browns, grays, then they have like tealy blues, and then it's got these purpley things. And for me, these 6 shades, or whether I put this on, there was like very little distinction between that. These pulled incredibly gray on me, so even though they look purpley and blue toned in the pan, I just got a gray eyeshadow look, and I'm not that dark even, so I'm like, unless you're like paler than me, this may not work for me. So that's why I would not personally go out and repurchase this if I lost my entire makeup collection. This is not a eyeshadow palette that I think I would necessarily miss all that much either, especially because we've now had this influx of all of these cool tone color stories in the past 2 to 3 months that, of course, I'm going to try, and I definitely think there's going to be something among that newer eyeshadow palette sort of releases that I'm just going to enjoy a lot more, that is going to give me similar vibes to this. I'm also not a huge fan of all matte palettes, so maybe I just kind of shot myself in the foot with this one. Because as much as I love Viseart, I think the palettes they do, where they also include shimmers, are just a lot better for me. However, I kind of bought this so that I can get some more use out of my other cool tone Viseart color stories. So does this still have merit in my collection? Yes. But is this going to get a whole lot of use? Now that I've tried it, I don't think so. And then this one is difficult for me. It's the Nabla Cutie Midnight palette. This was their number 6. So this was released a little bit later because I think we got 5 initially and then we had 6 and 7. So I definitely bought these a little bit from like a collector's standpoint because I owned the previous 5 and I wanted to complete the set. However, I do think that 6 and 7 were the more interesting color stories. However, now that I've tried more blue eyeshadow palettes as part of my makeup collection, I think that this has sort of like gotten forgotten in my, like, it's definitely sort of fallen to like the back of a drawer, you could say. Well, it's not, it's like actually front and center. But I've just kind of forgotten about this one because I just have other blues that I like better. But it's still a really good one. Like, we have some really stunning shades in here. But I think what this palette is missing, like, for me, the bronze in here, like this bronze gold shade, feels like such a stark difference. And I think they've done this to appeal to a wider audience. But for me, if this was not there and we got another matte that could sort of bridge the gap between the very light blue and the navy, I mean, the navy in this is stunning, then I think it might have worked a little bit better because we do get 3 really stunning shimmers. The light blue is more of a satin, sort of has a bit of sheen to it as well. It's not a full-on matte. So really the only matte we get in here is this really intense navy blue. So I would have liked something to be able to blend this out with a little bit more. Maybe if this had been, like a more neutrally taupe shade, it could have worked. But this like shimmering bronze gold together with the blues doesn't really work for me. But I would really miss these 2 blue shimmers for sure. Like, I have another navy blue now that I like in a matte, which is in my Glam Shop palette, but I think I would miss these 2. So what I might end up doing with this, once it comes around to decluttering time, I may take out the 2 shimmers and like repress them into a round pan and put them in my single eyeshadow collection for sure. But I don't think I'm going to keep around the palette. Or from a collector's standpoint, it could just end up in a makeup memory box and I keep it intact and I just look at it from time to time because she's pretty. Because I really like the packaging and I still really like the way this looks. But like I mentioned, I have other eyeshadow palettes that are blue tones that do what that one does, but then in a full blue color spectrum. Or if I take my BH Cosmetics Bubblegum and my Glam Shop Nibiski palettes and I fuse them together, I will get what this palette gives me. So that tealy shade that it has, like this, something similar is in the Bubblegum from BH. So I possibly don't need to keep this around at all. You know what I mean? Speaking of Glam Shop, I also wanted to include some Glam Shop again. So this is the green palette that was discontinued and I now own their newer green palette, which I think I like better. So in terms of an all green palette, I do think this is one of the best ones I've tried. You get some vibrant greens that pull a little bit more, like you can see how blue heavy these are. And then you have these like warmer orangey things. You even get something neon. As far as a green tone palette goes, I think this is one of the more interesting ones that I have. I also have the green one from BH Cosmetics, which is the pistachio one, and I think that's more like full-on green, and this gives you a little bit more option to play with. This has been discontinued though. You can no longer buy it, which is a bit of a shame, but I do really enjoy this. If I could repurchase it, I might, but because I now have that newer Glam Shop palette, the nice weed one, if you translated it with Google Translate, that's what it's called. And I think I like that one better because it's cooler toned and a little less vibrant, so it's a little bit more wearable for me. It's like you're wearing greens, but it doesn't look like you're wearing greens. You know what I mean? Whereas this one is more of like a true green palette, so it really comes down to what you prefer. So I do like this. I really enjoy the quality. If I could repurchase it, I might. But if I lost all of my eyeshadow palettes, I would probably go for the newer release from Glam Shop than this one, to be quite fair. Do I still enjoy this? For sure. Come springtime, I'm going to have to put this in a palettes I want to go back to video for sure, because this is a stunner of a palette. Well, I was on a green kick this time around because I also have the Melt Cosmetics Smoke Sessions palette. And I don't necessarily regret buying eyeshadow palettes all that much, and I definitely bought this one to complement the Gemini at the time because that's what everybody's saying you could do with this. This is more shimmer heavy. It only has 2 mattes and then 6 shimmers, and the Gemini only has like 2 shimmers and everything else is matte, I believe. But to be quite fair, I never reach for this. This is another one I just forget I own. And every year when it comes time to declutter my makeup collection, I keep it in because I like the look of this. I really think the shimmers are really pretty. But if I use it, I kind of use these shades because this has a bit more of a green undertone as well. But these yellow tones I never go into. And like the mattes in this, like to use it as a standalone, the mattes are just super dark, so I would never use it for that. And this is also perhaps a little bit more vibrant than I would like. So officially, for me, it's more like this, like the grungy tones. That's what I keep it around for. But do I ever really pull this palette out and use it? No. So would I miss it if it were gone? Is this going to be on the priority list of something I would like to repurchase? Would I be interested in this if it was released nowadays? Not at all. It's like I say, I don't normally say very quickly that something is a regret, but this one is a bit of a regret, I think. Because if I use the Gemini, I kind of just use it by itself, and I never really go into this at all. But yeah, I'm glad I own it. It's got a lot of shimmers from Melt, and I like Melt shimmers. But that's about as far as it goes. So this is a bit of a boo-boo that I made. Another boo-boo that I made is the Minka palette from Adept. I was super excited for this when it launched. I bought it on launch day, and I was super disappointed once I got it home. I had tried 2 Adept Cosmetics palettes before this, and I was thinking that this was going to be the same kind of formula. This is not. It's a very sort of flaky shimmer formula that I know a lot of people love and adore, and I like a flaky shimmer from time to time to top over a look or to make it like extra foily. I like them for that. But when the entire palette, save for the 2 mattes you get in a palette, is that kind of flaky shimmer, and maybe not like these 2 multichromes at the bottom, but all this is that same texture. And I think I can still make this work for sure. Maybe if I were to pull in my Viseart, this baby. Like this is definitely a combo I'm gonna have to make at some point. Do you see what I'm going with here? Because I think these shimmers and these mattes can work really well together. So that's something I'm definitely going to do. But as a standalone palette, this didn't quite work for me. And Adept, before, like when I bought this, I wasn't aware that they were stocked on Monolith, and I had never shopped through them. They are stocked on Monolith though, so you don't have to pay the like super duper high price point that you need to pay for that when you buy this yourself from the US website, because this palette was like close to 80 or 85 euros for me, because Adept palettes aren't cheap, and then with the shipping and handling fees on top of that, it can get quite pricey. So I was a little bit disappointed with this one. Can I get more use out of it? Yes. Would I repurchase this if I lost it? No, because I feel I have other shimmers that are cool toned that I like better. I don't necessarily need to have this in my life. And so I was hoping to get the same Adept formula that I love, but then in a cool tone color story. That's why I bought it. And I was a little bit disappointed with it. Does this work though? Are these super foily, incredibly great shadows? Do I appreciate them from that standpoint? For sure. Like, this is stunning. If you're into that super glam, especially this shade here on the end is, oh, it's heaven. And then combined with something like, you know, this dark gray with that, oh, it's so stunning. But then you also get those blue tones, you get some multi-chromes, like shade for shade. This is so pretty. It's so pretty and so foily and just really, really yummy. And where these foily shades, if you have hooded lids, can really start to crumble down and disappear within an hour, these stay. And they work really, really well. It's just that for how much I paid for it and how, like, that it just doesn't really work the way I'd like it to is what irks me. So I'm not saying this is a bad palette. If this is a formula you love, you're gonna like this for sure. But for me, it's not a must-have in my makeup collection. So not a regret necessarily, because I can definitely see how I can make it work, but not something I would run out and repurchase either. And to my surprise, I had not mentioned this one yet. Who am I? The Zoeva on Taupe. If this could come back, please. I keep talking about this palette. It's been discontinued years ago. Zoeva on Taupe is quite possibly one of the lightest eyeshadow palettes that has ever come to the market. And I really enjoy this one till this day. I went back to it a couple of months ago in my Palettes Revisited video. I really enjoy this. This is just such a good palette. And if this weren't in my makeup collection, I think I would miss it. I definitely think I would. However, we now have quite a few eyeshadow palettes out that are new to market that I haven't tried yet. I'm trying them this month, some of these, and some of them are going to be rolled into my January and February Shop My Stashes for sure. But these like grays with like a purpley undertone with like some taupes running through it. It's a vibe that is currently very trending, and that's why I am thinking that this might be dethroned as such, because I just feel there are going to be palettes that I'm currently trying that are going to be very similar to what this does for me. But this is still like the original. This is our you know, the palette that made me realize how good I look in cool tones, that things don't always have to be super dark and sultry for me. It's got those duochromes that I keep raving about. This is just such a solid palette till this day. I definitely can see why formula-wise this isn't going to be everyone's favorite, because this is very buildable and satin heavy. It doesn't have like the foily things that the Minka has. But where the Minka doesn't have enough variety in terms of because everything is like one level of shimmer, this still has variety. It has mattes, it has those duochromes, but it's not like the intense foily things we want to see nowadays. So if this could be updated, like if this was re-released, and we can keep some of the mattes that it has, but then the peach, if that could be like one of those really foily shimmers from the Minka, we have a very nice update for 2023. Can anybody help me make that happen? I would love that. But yeah, if I could repurchase it, I would definitely do that because it is a standout in my makeup collection. And finally, I also feel that way about this. I have to talk about it. It's December again. I always whip out this palette when we're getting into wintertime. This one is the first thing I think of, and it's the Too Faced White Chocolate Bar. This palette got so much hate online because, like the Zoeva, she's light. She is a fair-skinned person's dream. It looks warmer toned than you might think because it has some peachy things over here, and this as well, and this looks like it's going to be very yellow. But on me, this is like very nice smack in the middle neutrals. It doesn't get any better than this. If you have fair skin, then these pastel-y things are going to stand out really well. And I also have to mention that these two shades, as orange as they look, they are pinky peaches. And on me, the pink comes through a lot more than the orange does. Just saying. One of my favorite shimmers of all time is in the palette. It's called Sugar Raisins. It's right here. Did I need both banana, is it called banana date and glaze, like the white and this green? No, I never use the white because we also get the sparkly white, and I use the sparkly light in my white in my inner corner. This is nice for blending, but everything here is light enough that I didn't need a blend shade. So I never use the two big ones, ever. But this is such a good one. I love going back to this every winter. I keep saying how much I like this. If this was still for sale, I would definitely buy it. I would buy it in a heartbeat, and I'm so glad that I also found it very randomly, like months after it launched. I found this in a Too Faced store on Carnaby Street in London. That's where I picked this up. And then I realized, wow, this is actually a palette that, like, it's made for me. Whereas everybody online was hating on it because it was so light. And I definitely think that that's a thing I've seen a lot happening in the online beauty community, is that people say makeup is bad quality, but then it just wasn't quite right for their skin tone sometimes. So it's like that trend that's going on, like, does it work, or is it just working because she's skinny kind of thing? And here it's like, it works for me because I'm super fair toned, but if you have anything that's deeper than my complexion, something like the Too Faced or the Zoeva, is never, ever, 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 ever going to work. And I'm like, not everything has to work for everyone. So if something like super dark and sultry, then it may not work for me, but then I'm not going to say it's bad quality makeup, because it's just not quite right for my complexion, you could say. So these work really well for me. Definitely the Too Faced would be a repurchase for me if I could still get my hands on it. If that one, like, there's a reason why. Again, from what I did with all of the Colourpop palettes, I have either decluttered or condensed down all of my Too Faced palettes into one. My Gingerbread XR Spice has shades from 3 different Colourpop Too Faced palettes in, and this is the only one I've never messed with. And I keep it intact, and I go back to it every year, and I love it. I just love this thing to pieces. So yes, if I could repurchase, I would. If that color story came out today, I would purchase it. In fact, if you've seen anything, like if you've seen my recent haul, you know, because that's exactly what I'm still going for till this day. So yeah, that was it for me for today. Thank you so very much for joining me. This was some eyeshadow palettes that I wanted to hypothetically talk about, and like, do I still like these? Yes or no? Would these still interest me? Yes or no? And there were quite a few here today where I'm like, not sure I would still like those, given that I now have other things I might like better, or because those color stories just were never quite right for me. And sometimes you just don't make the right decision. So let me know in a comment down below what eyeshadow palettes, how you feel about some of these, if you've tried them, or maybe that you've come to one of those insights recently. I would love to know. And for now, if you could thumbs up the video, that would greatly help me out. If you could subscribe even, if you want to see more of what I do on here, that would be lovely too. And for now, I would like to thank you so very much for being here, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye-bye!